Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to review a game that encapsulates the phrase that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That's right, Friedemann Friese, Fear Game. This is from the fabled series, the Fast Forward series of games. Now what's special about this little box? Those of you who know the designer know that his very highly rated game Power Grid is a mathematician's wonderland. Tremendous game, incredible game. For years and years it was the top game, the top dog out there. But he has since branched into a whole lot of different variety of games, and one of them is this series. Now it started with Fabled Fruit, which was a series that had you building juices from fruits over time, and it was almost a reusable legacy kind of game, which means that you'd play the whole game, go through all the stack of cards over a course of several sessions. Fear kind of distills this down in a different way. The thing about Fabled Fruit and some of the other ones before it are that it is more of a full-featured game, whereas Fear is almost like it is fast forward. It's fast, and you only go forward in the deck. The deck it's a single deck of cards, 90 cards, I believe, and you play through it. Now, the thing is, as I mentioned in my weekend games earlier, you don't actually read any rules. Everything's encapsulated in the deck of cards, including cards that give you new rules. Some of you remember, well, we'll get into that later. That said, I need to be careful with this, so I'm going to give you a quick definition of the game, and that's all I'm going to give for starters, and then I'm going to separate it with a spoiler alert, because the joy of this game in a lot of ways is the discovery, because when you start playing this, you don't know what the rules are, and for those of you who don't want to be spoiled by it, definitely skip past it to the final comments, and don't bother with the inside part. For those who do want to know a little bit about it, I will give a single overview that gives, actually probably best just to go to the review at the back, and I won't give anything away. But in the middle of this video, I will go through and actually show you the game as it plays, and then I'll get to my final comments. So once again, big warning, if you don't want to know how this game plays out because you want to be surprised, then by all means skip through to the end. Otherwise, let's get into some gameplay. So here we start with a basic deck of cards, ordered, and we're not going to give it away. We're just going to say these cards are ordered up to card 90. And everything we do and everything we handle when we're playing this game all starts by just reading the cards and doing what it says. Now, for example, I'm going to have the Fear card, and it's going to say, find 2 to 5 players. Well, we'll pretend to be 2. Place all cards face down on the table on a draw stack without passing the cards. The game starts. Select a player to read the text on the back of this card. And here we have our first set of rules. Start player, during a turn, draw the topmost card, or play a card from your hand in the center of the table. Alright, you cannot pass. You shall not pass. Alright, then we're going to set these rules aside because these rules, I believe, continue on. So, player number 1 is going to grab a card. Player number 2 is going to grab a card. Then at this point, we're going to make those the hands, and we'll just show you the information so you could see it. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to take another card. And then he's going to take another card. Now at this point, we don't even know why we're taking these cards. What does it mean? What does it do? And so we're going to take, you know what, I'm going to play a card. Oh, hey, -1. But look, now we have a new instruction. So before we really kind of knew what to do, we started grabbing some cards, and now we have a new instruction. Interrupt play. Immediately read the text on the back of this card. All right, hand limit. Because we don't even have the right hand limit yet, or we have all the cards we need, we know now that we can't exceed 3 cards. We have to play a card or draw a card, but we can never have more than 3 cards in our hand.
At the end of our turn, we have to announce the sum of all the cards in the center, which we haven't played yet. If each card in your hand would increase the sum above 15, you lose. So if any card that you'd play would have brought the score to 15, bam, you lose. The other players add the card value in their hands. The player with the highest sum wins the game. Now, in a two-player game, obviously, whoever loses, the other person wins. But for a multiplayer game, whoever has the highest value in their hand is going to win. In case of a tie, the tied player who would have played next is declared the winner. So basically that's our second set of rules. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rules. So now we're going to keep playing. And I'm going to actually play this. I'm going to put it, and I'm going to say 3. 3 is now in the center of the table. What's he going to do? Well, that's fine. 6. 6 is in the center. Really? Well, I'm going to go ahead and draw a card. Ooh, now we have something weird. Change direction. After playing this card from your hand, change the direction of play. Not really relevant in a two-player game, but kind of Uno-ish in a multiplayer game. So, the player's going to take that. I'm going to go 3, 6, 13. Ooh, what are you going to do? Haha. 15. Ooh, what do I do? Wow, I'm going to draw. I'm going to draw. He's going to draw. Now I have to play a card because I've got 3. I've got 15 here. I'm going to actually go 14 and drop that puppy down. Then the other player is going to go, I'm going to grab that instead. It's going to go, I have to play a card or draw a card. So I'm going to, interrupt play. Immediately place aside. Read only at end of game. Alright, let's do that. So we know, because of how we're playing, that this game is just, this part of the game is just about over. I am now going to go 3, 7, 8, 10, 13, 14, 15, 14. I'm going to draw. Ooh, okay. Now it's your turn. He has to play a card. He's going to play a 0 and announce 15. Actually, 17, 18, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 14. So 14, all right? He's going to play 15 and change directions, which won't matter in a two-player game. He's going to draw. I'm going to draw. And now he has to play, and he knows that no matter what he does, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 14, 15. He knows that there is no card he can play that is going to matter. He has lost the game. I have won the game. Huzzah! Now we're going to read this at the end of the game, and what does it say? Preparation for the next game. The loser removes all of the cards in their hand from play, including the card they played or would have played, and places them into the game box. They're done. They're out of there for the rest of this session, this fast-forward legacy kind of session. They're not available for any future plays until we're through the deck and restart. Leave all the rules cards on the table. Shuffle all the cards in your hands and the cards in the center and place them face down on top of the draw stack. The loser is the new starting player. So basically, we take all of these, which I didn't really keep in the right order, but hey, what the heck. And we shuffle them, and notice, we're putting them back in the stack. We're going to be playing these suckers right away for the next game. Right now, I have won one game. My opponent has lost one game. And then we start again and we play again. Now what goes on? Well, I have given you just the initial setup, the initial cards. It gets a lot more interesting, and there's a lot more variations and game rules that can exceed other game rules. There are definitely cards that have special abilities that will help manipulate, but ultimately the whole point of the game is this like getting close to 15 without busting. That determines this back and forth, this tension of who's going to win and who's not. And that's really the essence of Fear and how you play. You will play all through all 90 of these cards, and we keep track with a pen and paper of how many games each player won and such. But we played through it all the way through, and like I said, as you play, you're only getting rid of a few cards each time as you're going through it. And so as it's going to take a few games to get through, to get to the more complicated, more interesting scenarios and situations and actions that you can perform. But it does get livelier. So it starts off with a sort of sedate, hit me. Oh, I overdid it. It said, and then it gets into more, hey, I can manipulate with these cards, I can manipulate this and that, and I can move around. It really gets interesting. And that's basically the gameplay of Fear. Now let's get into my final thoughts and see if it's, well, fearful, or whether it's inferior to other games, or whether it's not really scary at all.
All right, final thoughts on Fear. What do I think of Fear? I must admit I was a little skeptical on whether this would be an interesting game, or whether it would get samey, or that it was gimmicky. I had played Fabled Fruit, and I found it to be entertaining and pleasant. Not necessarily a fantastic two-player game, but amusing enough. And I do like the rolling out of more interesting gameplay over time, if it's paced well. It's sort of like, leveling up in your level curve in an MMO or an RPG, where like you want challenge, but then as time goes on, as you level up, you get more powerful, but you also have more interesting situations and more difficulties to overcome that require that you have a higher level. And so Fear is an interesting thing. Once again, I'm not going to give away any gameplay information in these final thoughts portions, other than to say that it really is a fanciful blackjack. At the end of the day, that's kind of the whole mechanism. It's the underlying mechanism is kind of that blackjack tension of trying to get close to, but not going over, I guess, Price is Right kind of thing too. Like get the right price without going over. Do not overbid. And in this way, it's the same way. It's got a little bit of you have some control. You have some ability to manipulate circumstances. You are at the mercy of the shuffling of the cards, and that might be a turnoff for some. But ultimately, you're playing these games quickly. The games really don't take that long to play. A few minutes at best to play through it. And the fact that the game ever rolls forward, marching on, whether you win or lose or whatever, and that each time you're incrementally sort of adjusting a little bit more gameplay. Not like you're playing a set of cards and then you throw them all away and you grab new ones, and those are even totally different. It's more like there's a little bit of the old when you're done with these, and it takes, I can see taking anywhere from, 6 or 7 to 12, 13 rounds of this, which you can easily set aside and play 5 or 6, and then put the rest of the cards, because you are removing cards from play as you go through this, and then playing it in several sessions, and then just keeping a tally of who won the most rounds of the game. But I like it. I do like it. I think I actually like it better than Fabled Fruit, even though I think it has the same conundrum that I think this game plays better with more than 2. Although it's serviceable at 2. There are some cards that just flat out don't have any impact. If you're just playing 2-player, it's interesting that you have changing conditions and criteria and situations thrown at you. In that regard, it's sort of like Flux without being Flux. You have a little bit of Uno-ish, but not really. But mostly, you just have that blackjack tension. The game that probably most similarly resembles it is a game called Cold War CIA versus KGB, which took almost the same kind of phenomenon of a target number and having to play cards to get to that number, but having abilities on almost all the cards to be able to manipulate it so that when it looked dire, like there was just no way you could pull your way out of it, that you did, or you were able to. And that's the same kind of tension and feel I get from Fear. I don't know anything of the other games in the series. There's Flee and there's Fortress, and those, I'm told, are very different as far as the underlying singular core principle of gameplay. This one, Fear, I give it a 7. I think it's solid. I think it's fun to play through. I was worried about replayability, but I don't think that's an issue here because I think it's still satisfying, and because you're shuffling cards, it's not going to be an identical experience from cards 1 to 90. Obviously, once you've played it a few times, you're going to get to the cards that are like, hey, read this next, and you're like, I already know what it says. But that doesn't stop you from flipping through it and doing it again and resetting, and of course you have to reorder the cards 1 to 90 again. But even if you know what's in there and you know what's coming, there's still not it's not a finite, fixed, linear, on rails experience. You still have some flexibility in motion, and I could see it playing through it several times. Some people, if they if it got a little samey, they could pass it on to someone else and let them try. But I do think it's a worthy start for this fast forward series, and it does pique my interest to try out the other ones. So on that note, thank you for watching Harebrained Games, and we'll see you next time.